They call it the most remote inhabited island on Earth. 3,000 kilometers of open ocean in every direction, and scattered across it, nearly 1,000 giant stone heads, some weighing more than a loaded truck, all facing inland, all watching over an island that for a while nearly emptied out completely. So, what happened here? For a long time, you had two options. Option one, aliens, ancient magic, pure fantasy, easy to dismiss. Option two is the one that actually stuck, the one repeated in textbooks and documentaries for 50 years. That the islanders themselves got greedy, cut down every last tree to drag their statues around, and collapsed their own civilization before anyone else ever arrived. That story isn't just oversimplified. Recent evidence says it's mostly wrong. The real story has a different villain entirely, and it isn't the people who built this place. Around 1200 AD, Polynesian voyagers found this speck of land using nothing but stars, currents, and open ocean nerve. They called it Rapa Nui, and once they settled, they started carving. Moai weren't just statues, they were ancestors given stone bodies, believed to hold a kind of spiritual power called mana, watching over their descendants and their crops. The bigger and more powerful your family, the bigger you built. Most stand around 4 meters tall, about as tall as a giraffe. And the heaviest one ever successfully erected weighs about as much as 2 school buses combined. Almost all of them were carved at a single quarry, Rongorongo, using nothing but stone tools. Some were left there unfinished, still stuck in the rock. But the real question everyone asks is simpler. No wheels, no oxen, no horses. This island never had any of them. So how did they move something this heavy for miles across rough terrain? For decades, the guess was log rollers, meaning to move the statues they'd have needed to clear entire forests to do it. Rapa Nui's own oral tradition said something stranger. The statues walked. In 2012, scientists finally put that legend to the test. 3 ropes, a small team rocking a replica statue side to side, and upright, a multi-ton Moai actually walked forward, step by step, exactly the way the old stories described. The legend was closer to the truth than the textbooks, and it means something important. They never needed to destroy their forests just to move these statues at all. So, if they didn't need the forest for the statues, why did Rapa Nui's palm forest disappear almost entirely? For years, this was held up as the ultimate cautionary tale. A society so obsessed with religious monuments it clear-cut itself into starvation. But there's a much quieter culprit hiding in the evidence. Rats. Polynesian settlers didn't just bring canoes and crops. Rats came along too, almost certainly by accident. And on an island with 0 natural predators, they multiplied without limit and ate their way through the one thing the forest needed to survive. Palm seeds. No new seeds, no new trees. Within a couple of centuries, the palm forest that once covered this island was almost entirely gone. And it didn't need a single axe to make that happen. And here's the part that really flips the story. Even after the trees were gone, the Rapa Nui didn't collapse. They adapted. Islanders broke up volcanic rock into gravel and spread it across their fields. A technique called lithic mulching, which locked in soil moisture, blocked wind erosion, and slowly released minerals as it broke down further. Recent research on population and settlement patterns backs it up. There's no solid evidence of a population crash before outsiders ever showed up. These weren't reckless people who doomed themselves. They were some of the most resourceful farmers in the Pacific, adapting to a crisis they didn't fully cause. The island's real turning point wasn't self-inflicted, it arrived by ship. In 1722, a Dutch expedition led by Jacob Roggeveen became the first Europeans to set foot here, sailing in on Easter Sunday, which is where the island got the name we still use today. At the time, most of the Moai were still standing tall. By the time later expeditions returned decades on, nearly every one of them had been toppled, face down in the dirt. A sign of growing rivalry between clans, not environmental collapse. Contact with the outside world had begun, and it would only get worse. The real disaster hit in 1862 when slave ships from Peru raided the island and dragged off close to half its entire population, including the island's king, its priests, and its most educated elders, shipping them out to scrape seabird droppings for fertilizer in Peru's guano mines. Conditions there were brutal, grueling, often deadly labor, far from home. Almost none of those captured elders made it back, and because they were nearly the only ones who could read Rapa Nui's own written script, known as Rongorongo, that knowledge died with them. To this day, no one on Earth can read it. International pressure eventually forced a handful of survivors to be sent back, but the ship carrying them home also carried smallpox, and it tore through everyone left on the island. By 1877, out of a population that once numbered in the thousands, only 111 Rapa Nui remained alive. Not because they destroyed their own home, because outsiders very nearly did it for them. In 1888, Chile formally annexed the island. For decades after, the surviving Rapa Nui weren't even free to move around their own home. Confined behind a fence to a single village, Hanga Roa, while the rest of the island was leased out as a sheep ranch. That restriction wasn't lifted until 1966. And one particular Moai, Hoa Hakananaya, was carried off even earlier. Taken by a British ship in 1868 and sitting in the British Museum in London ever since. In 2018, Rapa Nui's own community formally asked for it back. As of today, it's still there. Easter Island was never a story about people destroying themselves. It's a story about some of the most resourceful survivors in the Pacific who adapted to a crisis they didn't fully cause, only to be nearly wiped out by people who did. If this changed how you see those stone faces, hit subscribe, leave a like, and tell us which part surprised you most.